F12 Berlinetta has 730 horsepower. What is this in donkey power? Let's list our knowns and our unknowns. We know that the Ferrari has 730 horsepower. And we also know that 1 horsepower equals 746 watts. That's given to us. And we know that 1 donkey power equals 251 watts. That is also given to us. And what is unknown can be found in what they're asking for. They ask, what is this in donkey power? So we don't know the donkey power. So we need to come up with a plan to find the donkey power. And our plan will be to use conversion factors to convert between horsepower and donkey power. Now, if we look, we see that we can convert between horsepower and watts. And also, we can convert between donkey power and watts. But what's going to help us convert between 1 horsepower and donkey power? We don't know. We need to come up with a new plan. And that new plan will be to build a path that will take us from horsepower to donkey power. We're going to start with horsepower. 1 horsepower equals 746 watts. We know that because that's given to us. Now watch carefully, because we will see that watts and watts are connected. So I'm going to connect these 2 watts because watts are connected. So now that I've connected the watts to each other, I can observe that 251 watts equals 1 donkey power. And now our picture is complete. Over here we have horsepower, which we started with, and we have watts right here, and finally we have donkey power. And we're going to connect everything. So we're going, starting with horsepower, and we're going 2 watts, and then we're going to go from watts to donkey power. And that is our path. And now that we know our path, we can use conversion factors, because we don't have to go straight from horsepower to donkey power. As you can see, oops, moved the wrong thing. I can go from horsepower to watts using this, and then I can go from watts to donkey power using that. So our first step is to turn our known horsepower into a fraction. Well, we know that the Ferrari has 730 horsepower, so we're going to turn that into a fraction. Next, we must pick the right conversion factor to convert between horsepower and watts. So we're going to look at this right here, because this has both horsepower and watts set equal to each other. We're going to bring it down and around, and we're going to look at the conversion factors that are available to us. 1 horsepower divided by 746 watts, and 746 watts divided by 1 horsepower. And which one are we supposed to use? Well, we choose the conversion factor that puts the unit we know on the bottom. Now, we know horsepower. Horsepower is given to us, and that is right here, known. So, when we look at conversion factors, we need to choose the one that puts horsepower on the bottom. So that would be that right there. Horsepower is on the bottom. So I can scratch this one out because I will not be using that one. And I can take this conversion factor and move it over here, giving me 746 watts divided by 1 horsepower. Next, we multiply then cancel. You see, when we take these two and multiply them together, we have a horsepower on top and a horsepower on the bottom. And that causes them to cancel out. So now that horsepower is canceled out, all we are left with is watts. And now we can go from watts to donkey power using the other conversion factor, because we see this one, watts, will take us to donkey power. So let's grab it, let's bring it down, and let's get our conversion factors. 1 donkey power divided by 251 watts, or 251 watts divided by 1 donkey power. Which one do we pick? Once again, we choose the conversion factor that puts what we know on the bottom. Now, we know watts. Okay, that is right there. That is known. So, which one of these is going to put watts on the bottom? Well, it's definitely not this one. This one has donkey power on the bottom, so it can't be this one. So, it must be this conversion factor, because it puts what we know, watts, on the bottom. So we move that up here. 1 donkey power divided by 251 watts. Next, once again, we multiply. We need to multiply the conversion factors together. And we have a watts on top, we have a watts on the bottom, so you can probably guess what's going to happen to them. They are going to cancel. And watts is now canceled. So we finished with watts, and all we are left with is donkey power, which is what we want. And finally, we need to multiply all of our fractions together to get our final answer. We'll do that by multiplying across the top, 730 times 746 times 1 donkey power, which gives us 544,580, divide by, and now we multiply across the bottom. 1 times 1 times 251, which will give us 251. And finally, when we divide the numerator by the denominator, divide the top by the bottom, we will get our final answer, which is 2,170 donkey power. And so now we've got our answer. What is its horsepower converted to donkey power? 2,170 donkey power. And our problem is solved.